Hello, my name is Jen. Welcome back to my channel, Literary Love 123, where I like to combine my master's in English with my passion for the horror genre to talk about the books that I read. Today's video is a fall and Halloween book recommendation video, and this is part 2. If you did not see part 1, you can watch this one first and then go back and watch part 1, and I will link part 1 down in the description box below. So after this quick intro, I'm going to share with you some books that I recommend for fall and Halloween. In this video, I have middle grade and YA recommendations. I have poetry recommendations. I have recommendations for both classic and contemporary horror and gothic works. So let's start with middle grade and YA. So the first book I want to recommend is Frozen Charlotte by Alex Bell. And don't let the middle grade category deceive you, because this book is pretty spooky. If you like creepy kids, creepy dolls, then you may want to read this one. So I'm just going to go over the synopsis of these books to try to keep this video from going too long. And I just want to keep it, kind of short and sweet. Charlotte is cold. When her best friend dies under mysterious circumstances, Sophie sets off to stay with her cousins on the remote Isle of Skye. It's been years since she last saw them. Brooding Cameron with his scarred hand, Piper, who seems too perfect to be real, and peculiar little Lilius with her fear of bones. Still, Sophie never expected the strange new rules the family now lives by. Make no mention of Cameron's accident. Never leave the front gate unlocked. Above all, don't speak of the girl who's no longer there, the sister whose death might have closer ties to Sophie's past and more sinister consequences for her future than she ever knew. So, the second book I want to talk about in the middle grade YA category, this leans more YA for sure, and that is The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein by Kiersten White. So, she takes the story of Elizabeth and gives it more of a feminist spin. We're getting the real perspective of Elizabeth. If you are familiar with Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, you know that Elizabeth is kind of just a side character, mostly serving to kind of move the plot along. But Kiersten White does something different and gives agency and autonomy to Elizabeth. And if you want to hear more about this book, I did talk about it in my Frankenstein inspired reading vlog. So I will link that vlog down in the description box below too. And I don't think I mentioned I gave this 5 stars, and I also gave Frozen Charlotte 5 stars. The next book I want to mention, and you're probably familiar with this, is Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. So this is a story collection that was collected by Alvin Schwartz. This is all 3 volumes in one. So this is like folklore, urban legends. There's a movie adaptation of this too. So I highly recommend reading Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. You could read a story or 2 a day and carry it on all through spooky season, and then on into spooky winter time too. The next 2 recommendations I have are for poetry. Both of these poems feature vampire symbolism during the Romantic era. The first recommendation I have is Christabel by Samuel Taylor Coleridge. If you are a fan of Carmilla, then I feel that you will really enjoy Christabel. And you will also be able to trace the influence of Christabel on J. Sheridan Le Fanu's writing of Carmilla. The second poetry recommendation I have for you is Lamia by John Keats, which is another poem featuring vampire symbolism. You also have the idea of the femme fatale in both of these poems too, and you can look at them from the perspective of feminist points of view, as in how were women thought of during this time, and have we changed since then or not? But that's a topic for another day. But I do recommend both of those poems. The next recommendation I have for you is an anthology, and that is Tales from a Talking Board. This collection is, let me see who it's edited by Ross E. Lockhart. And this features stories from various authors that all center around supernatural and paranormal events. And all of them connect in one way or another to a Ouija board. It's a very interesting collection. As per usual with anthologies, there are some hits and misses, but even if you don't like all of the stories, this makes for a wonderful, wonderful display on your shelf. The next few recommendations I have for you are classics paired with a contemporary work. So, the first classic I want to recommend is The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe. This is a collection of Poe's poems and stories, and I really recommend all of them. But if you just get to one during spooky season, then I recommend The Fall of the House of Usher, and pair that with T. Kingfisher's What Moves the Dead, which is a reimagining or kind of not really a retelling. I think more of a reimagining of The Fall of the House of Usher. And I was anxious, about whether or not this would work for me because of my deep love for Poe and especially The Fall of the House of Usher. But it really did work for me. So that's a fun pairing, to pair a classic with a contemporary. The second pairing that I have for you for classic and contemporary, I want to recommend Charlotte Perkins Gilman's The Yellow Wallpaper, and pair that with Gemma Amour's The Once Yellow House, and also with Gemma Amour's Full Immersion. And I have a video where I really talk more about the connections between The Yellow Wallpaper and The Once Yellow House. So I will link that down in the description box below. The connection between The Yellow Wallpaper and Full Immersion is, once again, you have a woman's point of view, a woman dealing with depression, particularly in the area of postpartum depression. And you will see those connections between both Charlotte Perkins Gilman's real life experiences as well as Gemma Amour's real life experiences. And each of them put themselves on the page with Gilman's The Yellow Wallpaper and then with Amour's Full Immersion. Now, Full Immersion is a sci-fi horror, which doesn't typically work for me, but this one really, really hit me close. But be sure that you check trigger warnings for all three of those books. The next few recommendations are all witchy books for fall and Halloween. And each of these witchy books brings something different to the table. So the first one I want to recommend is Slewfoot by Brom. If you like Robert Eggers' The Witch, then I think you will enjoy Slewfoot. If you like that Puritan era historical kind of horror, I think you will enjoy this. If you like good for her horror, I think you will enjoy this. And let me show you just a couple of illustrations that you can appreciate. If you like art with your reading, then this has you covered. The second witchy book that I want to recommend is Cozy, very light on horror, and that is Cackle by Rachel Harrison. It's kind of a adult coming of age story where you have a character in her 30s who finally learns to embrace who she really is and to find freedom in independence. We'll just say that because I don't want to give away a lot about it. And there may or may not be a witch in the story. The next one I have is The Witch's Book of Self-Care: Magical Ways to Pamper, Soothe, and Care for Your Body and Spirit. And this is by Erin Murphy Hiscock. So you'll have ways recommended to you in this book where you can kind of reconnect with yourself. It talks about herbs, stones, and just kind of little things you can do to practice self-care. The final witchy recommendation I have for you is can I ever make a video where I don't hit that microphone? Is Literary Witches, a celebration of magical women writers, and it is written by Teza Kitiskaya and illustrated by Kathy Horan. And this celebrates several prominent women writers and also women writers that you might not have heard of before. And it treats them as if they are witches. And for example, here's the page on Emily Dickinson. So you get these lovely illustrations. You get sections that talk about what was empowering about each of these women writers. You get recommended reading from each of the women. It has women like Anna Akhmatova, who was a Russian poet, Toni Morrison, Shirley Jackson, Angela Carter. And if you like that, then it also comes with a Literary Witches Oracle deck. So let me just show you a few of these cards. It has the guidebook too. If you're not familiar with Oracle decks, you have a guidebook and you have these lovely illustrated cards. This one's for Anna Akhmatova. Here's Octavia Butler's The Glare is Killing Me. Virginia Woolf. And then you have sometimes you have animal cards, like a boar card. And then the back you can see have these lovely black and white illustrations. But this is a beautiful set with the book and with the Oracle deck. So I highly recommend that. The last few books that I recommend are all going to feature women writers who you can read about in the Literary Witches book that I just showed you. So the first writer I want to recommend is Angela Carter. This is The Bloody Chamber, and it features the titular story as well as several others. And this is Angela Carter's feminist retelling of fairy tales. Very dark, uh, very gothic, and very good. The next recommendation I have for you is Daphne du Maurier. And this collection is titled Classics of the Macabre. Now, you may be familiar with Rebecca from Daphne du Maurier, but this is a collection of her short stories. Two you may be familiar with, The Birds, which a lot of people don't even know that Daphne du Maurier wrote. They only attribute The Birds to Alfred Hitchcock's adaptation, which is quite different from Daphne du Maurier's original story. Hitchcock's is set in the United States, whereas Daphne du Maurier's story is set in the Cornwall region of England. You also have in this collection Don't Look Now, which was made into a film starring Donald Sutherland and Julie Christie. And the story in this book is a bit different, or maybe I should say the movie adaptation is a bit different from the story. And those are two of my favorites, but there are also a lot of other good stories in this collection too. The final set of recommendations I have for you are all books from Shirley Jackson. So I recently finished Dark Tales by Shirley Jackson, And I talked about it in my August wrap up video, which I will link down in the description box below. Again, some of these are really short, and you could read one or two of these a day. The other collection of short stories by Daphne du Maurier that I have and recommend to you is The Lottery and Other Stories. This one, of course, has The Lottery, which a lot of you may be familiar with. Another one of my favorites in this collection is The Witch, and I think you will enjoy that. Then, of course, the classic, The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. Now, don't go into this book if you are expecting it to be like the Mike Flanagan adaptation of The Haunting of Hill House. They're very different. And I do like The Haunting of Hill House, but even more so, my final recommendation is Shirley Jackson's We Have Always Lived in the Castle. And I like this even more. It features one of my favorite literary characters of all time, Mary Cat. And that concludes my part 2 of fall and Halloween book recommendations. So let me know, did any of these pique your interest? Are you planning to pick any of these up? What are you planning to read? And are you participating in any of the readathons like Spooky Scary Skeletons readathon hosted by Nicole? I'll link her channel down below, or Halloweenathon hosted by Kelsey. And I will also link her channel down below too. So thank you for hanging out with me. I would appreciate it if you would like this video and subscribe. And I will see you next time. Bye. Thank you for watching.